Some things just go together, like peanut butter and jelly, nuts and bolts. That's why Columbia Bank decided to take the stable growth of a high-rate CD and combine it with the freedom of a checking account. Now you can grow your money and access it anytime. It's the best of both worlds, all backed by over 90 years of worry-free Columbia Bank dependability. Yield plus checking from Columbia Bank. Visit a branch today or ColumbiaBankOnline.com. Count on Columbia. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hello, everyone, everywhere. This is Bob Thibodeau with the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, and you are listening to Life Transformation Radio with my good friend Sean Douglas. Be sure to subscribe to his podcast so you will not miss any of the upcoming episodes, and be blessed in all that you do.
Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. This show is all about life transformations and our journey from where we were to why we are doing what we are doing today. We will discuss the hiccups, the roller coasters, and the blood, sweat, and tears that has been poured out while discovering our purpose. It is all about our transformations. Here is your host, Sean Douglas.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of Life Transformation Radio. We are live. This is the last episode of 2018. I can't believe it. The year is almost over. So I'm super pumped to have this one last episode. So I am your host, Master Resilience Implementer, TEDx speaker, business positioning strategist, and author, Sean Douglas. This show is currently heard in over 66 countries, such as the U.S., Canada, the UK, Australia, Panama, Belgium, all across Europe, Asia. So I want to thank you to those who are listening from around the world. Life Transformation Radio is all about our transformation. Here is where we tell the stories of why we're doing what we're doing. We highlight that transformational moment that has changed our lives and how we use this to help transform others and elevate their lives as well. You can listen to us live right here on the Blog Talk Radio Network at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, but also check out our 5:30 p.m. Eastern episodes as well, Tuesday through Friday. Join our Facebook community, Life Transformation Radio Community. I ask that you subscribe, rate, and review the show anywhere you're comfortable listening to podcasts, but we are on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, Player FM, Radio Public, Overcast, CastBox, and the Google Play Music app, or right here on Blog Talk Radio. On the show, I have entrepreneurs, speakers, business owners, coaches, podcasters, authors, amazing people who are impacting the world around them. And my guest today does exactly that. If you have any questions for any of my guests that I bring on the show, this is a live show. So if you're listening to us live, you can call us up at 657-383-1109. Again, the number is 657-383-1109. So please help me welcome to the show my friend Joel Hawbaker. What's up, dude?
Good morning. How you doing?
Dude, I'm so pumped, man. Like, I'm so glad we get to do this. This is the last episode of 2018. So Life Transformation Radio in Season 2 had 117 episodes. You are the 117th episode of Season 2, and you are the last episode of Season 2, man. I'm so pumped.
Sweet. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm really excited about chatting with you today, and I am very glad to be able to sit down and do this on a Saturday morning. It's beautiful here.
Yeah, man, you know, I don't, like, I think I've done maybe one Saturday episode out of the 180 some odd episodes that I have. Nice. And that was for like a high level influencer. You know, it's like, man, I only have like this Saturday. And I'm like, okay. So, but I usually do it Tuesday through Friday, but you know, for you, man, I got to get you on the show before the end of the year, man.
Well, I'm very honored. I really am. Thank you very much. It's interesting. I've had a few different episodes or a few different interviews where, for whatever reason, the the time we tried to schedule just didn't work. I had one that I did with a guy. We probably rescheduled the interview 5 or 6 times over a course of 4 months before we were able to get it recorded. So yeah, just I'm glad to be able to connect and looking forward to our conversation, and it should be a lot of fun.
Heck yeah. Oh yeah. So the title of this episode is Real Life Leading with Joel Hawbaker. Joel is a high school teacher and soccer coach in Alabama, where he lives with his wife, 2 daughters, and their 2 energetic rescue dogs. Joel is a professional speaker who focuses on the topics of leadership, blended family life, and education. His book, Inverted Leadership, Lead Others Better by Forgetting About Yourself, was the #1 bestseller on Amazon in the business leadership category, and he is currently working on his next book. His website is www.reallifeleading.com, reallifeleading.com. His Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook are all right there in the show notes, so connect with him. He is doing amazing things. So, man, the first question that I got to ask you, man, is what is your why? What is your deep why for what you do?
So that's always a great question to ask. My deep why, my huge reason for doing all the stuff that I do is my family. That's, it's part of the reason why they're right up top in my intro. I've got a wife, I've got 2 daughters, and they are the big reason for everything that I do. And what I mean by that is I'm divorced and remarried. So one of the topics that I really spend a lot of time discussing with people and trying to help people with is blended family life. And the reason for that is because it's something that I've lived for the past, 6 or 8 years of my life. And I lived it as a teenager as well when my parents divorced when I was in middle school. It's a topic or it's a situation that's becoming more and more common. And so it's something that you don't see a lot of good examples of blended family life going well. And so one of my big goals is to try to help people do that better. And I do that by focusing on what I call humility or the topic or the type of leadership that I call confident humility. There's a lot in there.
Awesome, man. So I'm a blended family. My wife had kids before we got together. So okay. I definitely resonate with that, man.
Yeah, so you know where I'm coming from. Just it's a complicated world. It can be wonderful, but it involves situations that a traditional nuclear family just don't know because they've never had to live through it.
Right.
And so I'm glad to be able to try to help people look at those issues and understand them better and function better within that world.
Definitely, it's definitely needed. I don't know your background too well as far as faith-based or whatever, but there are, at least at my church, there are blended family conferences that will sometimes happen at the church, and they bring in like these, world-renowned experts, and I think there's like 2 that I know of, and there might be more, but 2 like home-based Bible studies that people can do for like specifically for blended families, and I thought that was worth mentioning. But I know you're doing a lot of work with the blended family and leadership and stuff like that too. So, are you still with me?
Oh yeah, there you are. Sorry. I don't know if somebody hit the mute button or what.
Oh no. But I know you're doing a lot of work with the blended families as well, so that's good. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. I'm a pretty outspoken Christian. I teach at a small Christian high school, and the book that you mentioned, the intro, is certainly written from a gospel-centered perspective. And I'm always glad to hear that churches are purposely trying to equip families to live blended life better. That's one thing that I think is it's not done as well as maybe it could be, simply because a lot of churches aren't sure how to approach that, because it gets real sticky real quick when you talk about divorce and remarriage and kids. And, unfortunately, a lot of times there's still a lot of judgment that takes place. And I understand that, but I also, I'm not a huge fan of it. And so sometimes it's hard to come alongside people that are in situations that are different than yours, because obviously a lot of pastors don't come from blended families. And so sometimes it's hard for them to understand the situations that blended families are going through. And I'm really thankful before my wife and I got married, we were given a book by our pastor that we read through together and did some premarital counseling around by a guy named Ron Deal. The book was called The Smart Step Family, and he's brilliant. His stuff
he's one
has
of the
been
world-renowned
tremendously
people
helpful.
he's one of the world-renowned people that I've seen go to churches and deliver some stuff at conferences. And I wish I could remember. I wish I could remember what it was called.
Well, I know his website is Family Life Blended.
That sounds.
Yeah, he does great stuff.
Yeah, outstanding. So, what was a transformational moment in your life that put you on the path to what you're doing as an author, speaker, coach, teacher, all that stuff? What was a transformational moment for you?
I think one of the big transformational moments for me was actually going through my divorce. I guess, 8 years ago now. And the reason for that is because going through the divorce, really, that was when I kind of found rock bottom. I went through divorce and went through bankruptcy and foreclosure, and didn't have my kids for a lot of the time, and just everything that I had taken pride in, everything I'd been really happy about in my world was gone. And when everything that you've had is gone, then you really have to ask yourself some tough questions and look in the mirror and say, okay, what did I do that brought me to this place? And therefore, what can I change that will help get me back to where I want to be? And the big transformation for me was realizing that a large part of the problems I was experiencing were due to my own pride and my own decision making. And so, if pride was the issue, the solution is humility. And so I'm very passionate about that topic. Everything that I do, whether it's talking about blended family life or leadership or education, it all comes from this standpoint of humility. And that's a word that I think a lot of people don't like or don't understand. A lot of people confuse humility with weakness, and that's not what it is. Or sometimes they confuse humility with sort of false modesty, pretending you're not good at something when everybody around you knows you are. Like, that's not humility. C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, gives a very great explanation of what humility is. He says humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is simply thinking of yourself less. And so it's thinking about other people. It's a type of self-forgetfulness. And that idea or that mindset has really shaped the last 8 years of my life. It's become a question of, okay, what can I do to help and serve the people around me, whether that's in, because when I got divorced, I left teaching for a couple of years and did 100 other jobs, hated all of them, went back to teaching a couple of years later. And so whether it was when I was a firefighter or a bartender or, an insurance salesman or a construction worker, like, what can I do that's going to serve other people as opposed to what can I do that's just going to make me feel better? Because ultimately, if I'm just trying to make myself feel better, that's only going to work in the short term. So what I really found out is by trying to serve other people, well, that's what's going to bring me the most joy long term. And I'm thankful that, God has really restored a lot of things in my world. Again, I'm remarried. We have a home. We have our kids. They go back and forth each week. And so they get a week with me and a week with their mom. Our blended family situation is better than I really could have possibly expected it to be some years ago. And a large part of that is because God is continuing to teach me that it's not about me. And that was, that's the purpose of the subtitle of my book, Lead Others Better by Forgetting About Yourself, because I really find that to be true. So those are some big parts into why I do what I do, and the transformational moment in terms of hitting rock bottom and having to really look myself in the mirror and ask, what have I done and what can I do differently to get a different outcome?
I love that. What can I do differently? I love that. So if it's not about you, then who's it about? Is it about the kids? Is it about the whole situation? So what's the focus?
Yeah, that's great. Because that's the next obvious question, isn't it? If it's not about me, who's it about? The answer is it's about whoever I am around at that moment. So in my family, that means it's about taking care of my wife and taking care of my kids. In my soccer coaching, it means it's about serving my players. And what that looks like is my job is to help them become good people, not just good soccer players, because ultimately they're going to be people a lot longer than they're going to be varsity soccer players. Even if they play in college, they're only going to be soccer players till their early 20s, but they're going to be people for decades. So serving them means teaching them to be good people who are also excellent at soccer, not teaching them to be great at soccer by sacrificing becoming a better person. That's not it. Same thing in my classroom. I don't teach students history. I teach kids how to become better people in my history classes and in my Bible classes. That's what we try to do. So it's all about trying to serve the people that I'm around by helping them become better versions of themselves. That's kind of the definition of leadership I give in my book. It's the art of positively influencing the people around you to help them become better versions of themselves. And when we do that, we can make a huge impact in our little pocket of the world.
Man, I love that, man. Very cool mission you're on. I would like that a lot.
Thank you.
Don't just,
I'm enjoying it so far.
Don't just teach them, right? But like, it's like real world application. You know,
Absolutely.
That's one of the issues that I have in schools. You know,
Yep.
And so we homeschool one of ours, and our other daughter, she's like, no, I don't want to be. I want to go to school. You know, whatever. I get into the college debate all the time because some people are like, oh no, they're going to college. Oh no, they have to.
Right.
Like somehow that's the standard. You know,
right.
That if you go to college, you're somehow this amazing person. And I said, yeah,
right.
That's great, but you're really only talking about theory. You're going to be in debt. I mean, there's a lot of things that I can cite that's really wrong.
Right.
I said, but it'd be awesome if they had actual real world application in school. You know, when I was in school, and even here in North Carolina, you know, they're not talking about like relationships. They're not talking about you know, filing taxes. They're not, you know. And then I talked to my brother-in-law and my sister who live in South Carolina, and they're like, well, in our middle school, yes, they just did a whole thing about taxes, like the whole math class. Like, how do you figure out taxes? Like sales tax. How do you figure that out?
Right.
I said, yeah, but they're not telling you like here's their tax brackets and here's the, like, well, no, but I mean, you're figuring out sales tax. I'm like, well, I did that in school. My kids did that in school. You need to figure out sales tax. That's just math and money. But what I'm saying is they're not telling you why the government pay. You know, you have to pay taxes to the government.
Right.
They're not telling you exactly what you need to pay. If you make this much money, like they're not giving you real world examples. That's what I'm talking about. But what you're doing is what I love is that you're not just teaching them history. You're teaching them how to be a better person by teaching them history.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. And thank you. It's a joy to get to do that. I majored in history at Covenant College when I was in school, and I was also blessed. I got to study overseas at the University of Oxford for a semester, studied medieval civ over there. It was really cool. And it was a situation where I loved it because one of the big things that Covenant hammered home is that the purpose of your education is to shape your eternity. That is, the reason you go to college is not just to major in something. It's not just to get a good paycheck. It's to change the way that you think so that you can become a better person. And again, that's not to say that if you don't go to college, you can't be a good person. The whole point of that is their specific mission is to teach you to view the world through a grid of the gospel. Like that's the starting point. And when you do that, it really does change the way that you behave. It changes the way you relate to other people. It doesn't mean you're perfect. Again, I'm a guy who's divorced and remarried. By any measure, that's not a perfect life. But it does mean that post-divorce, I tried to do things differently than a lot of people. Because it's just the right thing to do. And so that's something I try to get my students to learn in high school, because one thing I learned, too, when I go and do presentations, I like to ask the question, how many people, has history was your favorite subject in high school? And very rarely do I get hands raised, because for a lot of people, history it's just boring. It's memorizing names and dates and facts about stuff you don't really care about, and there's no connection to what happened in the past and how it affects our present and how it's going to affect our future. So that's something I try to do very differently. My college professors were brilliant storytellers, and they made sure to connect what happened, 100, 500, 2,000 years ago with what we're experiencing today. And when kids hear that,
awesome.
well, then it makes them pay attention more, because they want to know. And so just like you were talking about, we have discussions. Like my U.S. history class only goes up through Reconstruction, so the period following the Civil War, because I teach U.S. History 1. And so that means we don't talk about anything that happened after really kind of the 1870s, at least as part of the curriculum. But we talk about current events all the time. And it's really fun to see kids make connections between what happened in the 1820s or the 1830s and what's happening in the 20-teens. That's a really, as a teacher, that's a really exciting aha moment. And the same thing with my kids, when we can talk about current events and they can realize, hey, we just talked about this thing in history, and that's related to what we're now talking about around the dinner table. I said, that's exactly right. That's the sort of thing that brings joy to a teacher's and a parent's heart. So that's something I try to do in my classrooms a lot, is just get kids to see the world is much bigger than our little town, and the world's history, even though it happened a long time ago, some of it still matters today. It still resonates. And that's a really fun thing to get to do.
Very cool. I'm pumped up for that. Because my kids, man, they just, like, what'd you learn today? They're like, well, I got this, and I'm learning this. I'm like, ugh. And then I look at, like, my kids, my son's homeschool. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm watching a video on the different tax brackets that we have, that we have to pay taxes, and this is why. And so I'm watching it, and I'm like, yeah, like, this is awesome. Like, and part of his homeschool has a Bible study attached to it. So he does like his English, math, social studies, like all that stuff, and then there's Bible study. So he has to do Bible study too, as well as and I'm just like, this is awesome. And he's a well-behaved kid, because before he'd get bullied, and he's like, man, this home sucks. I'm never going to use any of this. And I'm just, I don't know, man. Like, I'm all about education. I'm literally all about, and I forgot the famous quote, and I love that you're a teacher so we can have this talk. And I'm all about education, and I cannot remember what it was. I think it was like Albert Einstein or something, like education gets you so far, but knowledge is what, gets you whatever. But what I'm saying is, I've never consulted the periodic table to make life decisions. Right. Not freaking one time.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair.
But yet we teach these things, right? We teach these things for whatever reason. All right, cool, got it.
Yeah.
Intro to science, cool, got it. Got to get the periodic table, that's cool. But I've never consulted the Pythagorean theorem or any math theorem and make life decisions. It's just I scratch my head. I'm like, why do I need to know this? I'm never going to use this unless you're a science major, unless you're a doctor, unless you're a, whatever. But I feel like schools put these kids in a box and make them sit there for 8 hours teaching them the same things when each kid is different. And they try to standardize things the same way, but each kid is different. And then they pass these laws where it's like no kid left behind, so your kid can suck, but that they're still going to get passed on because you can't leave a kid behind. You know what I mean? So you're like passing these kids with like D's and F's, But if you look at some of the most famous entrepreneurs out there, they have a high school diploma. That's it.
Right.
Yeah. They failed out of college.
There are definitely a lot of things that can and should be improved in our educational system. And unfortunately, there's a lot of reasons why it's hard to change that. Like when you think of public education, it is a giant lurching machine. That's really, it's like trying to get a cruise ship to change direction with, a canoe paddle or something. But you're right. A lot of the things that you brought up, they really are issues within our educational system that need to be addressed. One of the things I'm thankful for is I teach at a small private Christian school, and so we have a little bit more flexibility. Like, we still follow the state guidelines and all those things. We follow the same requirements, but we're also allowed to, like, we also teach a Bible class. And my principal says it best. I love how she and the assistant principal, they remind us all the time. They say, listen, at our little Christian school, we face the same battles that other teachers face. Kids are kids. Just because you go to a Christian school doesn't mean the kids are better, doesn't mean their home life is any better.
Right.
That's not, you know what I mean? But she
Right.
says the difference is we fight the same battles, but we get to use different weapons because we get to share the gospel with kids on a regular basis. And that's something that I'm tremendously thankful for. Every day I get to teach a Bible class to high school kids. And so in the spring semester, I teach two of my all-time favorite books. I teach Mere Christianity and Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. And I've probably read these books a dozen times at this point because I've been teaching this class now for 6 consecutive springs. And I've read them a few times before that. And I love getting to do that because I tell the kids, you know, this class is going to have as much or more relevance and applicability as any of your quote-unquote academic subjects. Because if what we're studying in Bible class doesn't change who you are, and it doesn't change how you behave, and it doesn't change how your heart is, then we've wasted your time. And the same thing is true of all education. If the only things we teach kids are how to memorize names and dates and look at a timeline, then I've failed them. I don't care what the grade in my grade book says. If they haven't learned how to think better, if they haven't learned how to read, and if they haven't learned why those things matter, then I've failed them. And so that's a lot of what I try to teach in my classroom. It's the same kind of thing I teach when I go and do presentations. So, like, I was in Orlando, Florida, 2 days after exams ended for my high school. My wife and I drove the next day to Orlando. And so 2 days after I gave my last exam for the semester, I gave a big presentation at a Head Start Association conference there. And it was all on blended family life. And it was talking about what I call the 10 Commandments for blended family life. And the whole idea was to get people to change their mindset about how blended family life works. Because the first thing people have to understand, and you know this, first thing you have to understand as part of a blended family is you can't have things all your own way. You know, you cannot. Because if you try to, you're going to end up butting heads. Like, you can't have things all your own way in a regular family of 2 parents and however many kids. But if you have, the part of my presentation was 4 parents and 2 houses. If you've got 4 parents and 2 houses, nobody's getting everything their own way. And so the question is, do you fight that anyway and just try to get as much your own way as possible, or is there a better approach? Well, I fully believe there's a better approach, and I believe the better approach is to work together, all 4 parents, to do what's best for the kids. And that sounds really simple, but it's also really hard because it touches on a lot of emotional pains. It's going to have to force you to deal with some old hurts from whatever the previous relationships were, but it's necessary and it's worth it if you're going to raise the kids in the best way possible. And so that's something that, again, I'm really passionate about because it's not just give people information. It's try to change the way that people think so that it changes the way they live. That's a big part of whether, again, it's education, leadership, or blended family life. I really believe that your mindset is what shapes everything you do. So I talk a lot about trying to shift the way that we think because I think that's key.
Interesting. I like your style, man. I like where your head's at. Very cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's so contrary to what we know. I mean, I wasn't fully prepared, when I was 18 and graduating high school and, what I mean? Like, failed at relationships and got into alcohol and, did stupid stuff, I wasn't prepared to make life decisions, but I'll tell you what, I could read a book and, like you said, cite names and, I kept thinking back, and we learned about the Gettysburg Address, right? So we learn about this, we learn about the wars, and we learn about, whatever. And it wasn't until like a year or two ago when I was listening to, I believe it was Simon Sinek.
Okay.
I believe it was Simon Sinek. But he was talking about the Gettysburg Address. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I know about the Gettysburg Address. I know that. And so
right.
he was saying, he's like, hey, this is how you storytell, and this is how you become a better speaker, and this is how you, do all this other stuff. He's like, but did you know that Abraham Lincoln wasn't the sole person delivering at Gettysburg?
Right.
I was like,
yeah, there was a guy that spoke before him.
There was. And I had no idea, none whatsoever. I had no idea that there was another, because that's not what was taught. It was taught that Abraham Lincoln was there delivering the Gettysburg Address, one of the best speeches ever, whatever, but it was only 10 sentences.
Right.
It was literally only 10 sentences. The guy who spoke before him was the Secretary of State at the time, Edward Everett. And I remember this because he was talking about how that guy spoke for 2 hours. 2 hours this guy spoke. And it was crazy because nobody remembers.
Yep.
2 hours
and it's
talk,
funny because
nobody remembers.
Yeah, well, it's great too because even in the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln even says the world will not long note what we say here. He's even saying nobody's going to remember these speeches. You know, and it's well, that's kind of funny actually. It's, because we don't remember the first guy who talked forever. We do remember Lincoln's very short. I mean, you can you read it out loud. It takes 2.5 minutes maybe. The whole Gettysburg because I read it to my class every semester. And it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, yeah, this is. I mean, you could read this in the time it takes to do a commercial break. That's the whole thing. But the impact of it has lasted for 150 years, 170-ish or whatever it is now, and that's incredible, especially when even Lincoln himself didn't think it was going to last that long. And I think I think that's the point he was making is that he wasn't delivering a speech that was going to get him remembered. He was delivering a speech to honor the people who were killed on that battlefield. So he's serving other people. He's trying to preserve their memory. He's not doing it for himself. And yet, that's one of the things we best remember about Abraham Lincoln is this 2.5-minute speech that he gave on behalf of other people. And again, I think that's a really 100%. Cool. I think that's a really cool example of how, again, serving other people, doing things to try to benefit other people, it'll come back to you. And I think that's again, I think that's really cool. I think that's important to understand. I learned a lot of that kind of stuff from Bob Berg. If you're familiar with him, he wrote he's one of the co-authors of the Go Giver series. And he talks about the same sort of thing where if you will take care of other people, then it'll come back to you. And that's one of the things I share in my leadership book is instead of focusing on results, we should be focusing on building better relationships. And so the way that I put that is if you focus on relationships, the results will take care of themselves. So, again, if that's my soccer coaching or my family life or helping blended families or whatever it is, if I can focus on cultivating good relationships with people, then the results will be positive because we're all working to help each other anyway. Instead of competing with, so my wife and I, we're not competing with my ex-wife and her husband. We're working together with them to achieve the best results with our children. I'm not competing with my ex-wife for my kids. That's not how it is.
Right.
We are working together for our kids. And that drastically changes the entire
100%.
situation.
Yep, 100%. That's awesome, man. I never had that growing up. My mom and dad fought constantly. My dad joined the military, and my mom divorced him shortly after when I was in, first grade. And then it's just been crazy. My stepmom was always talking about how bad that side of the family was. My mom was always talking about how bad that side of the family was. My dad was always just kind of caught in the middle, you know. And then you have one side of the family saying your family sucks, and you have the other side of the family, aunts and uncles or whoever, saying that family sucks, and it's just back and forth, and you're just like, oh, God. And then, of course, my dad is caught in the middle because he got kind of blindsided. He went and joined the military, and his family's not there when he comes back. Kids are caught in the middle because they're like, well, what's happening? And I don't know what to do. And, so it's just it was just super ugly my whole life. And, it's still the same way today. Still the same way. My family talks crap about each other, and even, I'm 35, and, I got aunts and uncles that are like, well, you're my, I'm like, I don't care. Like, that was like 30 years ago. Like, I don't freaking care. But they hold grudges. And that's what, it sucks. Because they hold grudges. And they'll never, like, my kids, like, this is how bad this can get. So, my younger sister, we're all 4 years apart. So, I have an older sister 4 years older than me. I got a younger sister who's like 3.5. So, she'll have a birthday party and go, okay, we're having it at a central location. All right, we're having it at a central location. My mom's family all shows up. So one side of the family will all show up. The other side of the family is like, well, are they going to be there? Then I'm not going. Like, really?
Wow.
Really?
Yeah,
so,
that's hard.
Most of us just have 2 birthday parties. Like, we go to one side of the family, have a birthday party. We go to the other side of the family, have a birthday party. So when my kids have parties, I need to go to 2 separate families to have 2 separate parties. And my wife's like, this is stupid. Like, they need to grow the hell up. I'm like, yes, they absolutely do. But they will not. Like, they will never go to, and they'll tell you, like, I will never be seen with that family. Like, oh my God. Like, whatever, dude.
That's tough. And I'm sorry that that's the way it went down for you guys. I know that makes it much harder when kids are caught in the middle because of parents hurt. I mean, I get it. Like, I've been through divorce. There's a lot of hurt there. But yeah, I hate that for you. I'm very thankful too, because my family did it differently. My parents split up when I was in middle school, and my parents had a friendlier and more, I'm not sure what the right word is. They had a more productive divorce than I think a lot of people have marriages, because it was more cordial. It was more amicable. They worked together. We lived with my mom, but we spent every other weekend with Dad. But the thing is, Dad came and picked us up for school every day. So it wasn't like we only saw Dad every 2 weeks. Both my parents were military. Dad was a lieutenant colonel when he retired. I think my mom was in the reserves for 10 years.
Oh wow!
And so they were both, and they had both retired by the time most of the kids were, by the time we were growing up. But they, that was their mindset, that was their mentality. So it was pretty strict, pretty stern. But they were also really selfless people. And so when they split up, I never heard either of my parents say a bad word about the other one, ever. And they even told us, we're not going to talk bad about each other. We're not going to use you guys as pawns. We're not going to play you off each other. And that set a huge example for me that I didn't know I needed. But when I went through divorce, every decision I made, I would go back to, okay, so how would Dad have handled this? How would Mom have handled this? Because they did it so well that they made it the least amount painful for the children as they possibly could. We didn't have to do separate birthday parties. We still celebrated Thanksgiving together, like at what had been my parents' house that was now Mom's house, even after Mom started dating somebody else a year after the divorce. So at Christmas or at Thanksgiving, we would have Mom and Dad and Mom's boyfriend and Mom's boyfriend's dad and all the kids sitting around the table. And I asked my dad one day, as a teenager, you think, like, that doesn't make any sense, because I was a typical teenage boy and insecure and jealous. And so I asked Dad, like, doesn't it bother you? Doesn't it bother you that Mom's boyfriend is here? Like, doesn't that hurt you that she's dating somebody? And he looked at me and he completely seriously said, son, when your mom and I divorced, it no longer became my business who she spent her time with. The only exception to that is if she's spending time with someone who is bad to you or for you. But as long as he treats you well, it's not my business who your mother spends her time with. And I thought,
wow, that's tough.
Wow. Yeah, that was incredible. That was certainly not anything teenage Joel was ready to understand.
Right.
But I get it.
If my wife and I ever split up, I don't know, man.
Yeah, right?
If she ever got a boyfriend, I'd be like, oh, that sucks.
Well, and that's the thing. Is so, like, that's something that both my ex-wife and I have had to go through, because we're both remarried now. So my ex-wife had to go through seeing her ex-husband date somebody. And I had to go through seeing my ex-wife date somebody. And look, we live in a small town. We live in a town of less than 25,000 people. Everybody knows everybody around here. Yeah. So it's not like there's any hiding out. Like, we live a mile and a half apart. My wife and I have walked our dogs to my ex-wife's house to see the kids sometimes. Like, we have a great relationship among the four of us. My kid's stepdad has helped me coach my daughter's soccer team, and I've helped him coach our daughter's basketball team. You know, we've gone out for buffalo wings. We do joint birthday parties. We've opened Christmas presents together. And that's not to say it's all sunshine and rainbows. There are certainly points of tension, and there have certainly been some hard conversations. But one thing I've been very grateful for is that throughout the entire process, we have tried to make it a habit to do consciously what is best for the kids. Now, the hard part is, what do you do when you disagree about what's best? And so then it becomes a question of, how do you choose your battles, or how do you approach the other person? Because again, what we don't ever do, and my ex-wife and I agreed to this even before we had officially divorced, just while we were separated, and then through the divorce process, you know, we don't badmouth each other. We've never badmouthed each other. We don't do that in public. We don't do that in front of the kids. Like, we just don't talk badly about each other, because it doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't help anybody. Right. Again, that's not always easy. Anybody who's been through divorce knows there's a lot of hurt, and it'd be real easy to play the victim card. Right. But it's not going to help my two daughters if I were to go around saying bad things about their mom. You know what I mean? Like, it might have when they were little in the short term. It might have helped me to win a few cheap points by saying, well, you know, your mom so-and-so, or if your mom had only – but look, long term, man, that doesn't help. All I've done is badmouth their mother. How is that going to help me have a good relationship with my daughters? You know, and again, she's been much the same way. So we make it a habit to pray with our kids for their mom and their stepdad. We make it a habit to pray with our kids about the entire other kids. They've also got a little brother over there now. They have a 3-year-old toddler brother, and we pray for their little brother. Because what bad can possibly come of speaking well of the other family? How can that possibly be a bad thing to encourage my kids to treat their mom well? You know what I mean?
True.
So,
yep.
Like, so that's kind of the mindset that we've adopted. Well, like I said, it's something I appreciate. It was something I learned from my dad and my mom. They were great examples. My former father-in-law gave me a lot of great advice, even after his daughter and I had divorced. He and I have remained good friends. My current in-laws, my wife's parents, they've been entirely wonderful about the whole process. Like, we go to my daughter's basketball games, and a lot of times we all end up sitting together. And that's something, you know, we go see my kids' choir performances, or we go to our kids' soccer games, and I'm just thankful that it can be amicable, it can be friendly. And again, it's taken a lot of work. But it's also one where it's entirely worth it, because I don't have to worry about if I need to call my ex-wife and ask her a question, I don't have to worry if it's going to turn into a shouting match. I can just call her and ask the question, and she'll answer, and I'll say thank you, and then we're done. And it's fine. And I'm really, really thankful for that, because it's something that's not to be taken for granted. And that's part of the reason I'm so passionate about helping other blended families is to try to help them get to a place where it's more constructive for the kids. And so I was very thankful that presentation in Orlando that I mentioned earlier, man, got some great feedback, had some really great question and answer stuff with some of the attendees. And, and I was really thankful my wife was there with me recording it, because at the end, one of the attendees actually had a question for my wife, because I've never been a step parent, but she has. And so they had questions for my wife about what it's like to be a step parent. And, you know, I tell her all the time, like, God bless you guys that are step parents, because that's got to be the hardest job on earth. Because this is something I mentioned in the presentation, like, you have all the responsibilities of a biological parent. You have bills to pay and errands to run and practices to get to, and you're not guaranteed any of the benefits. You can't guarantee your stepkids are going to like you, love you, or respect you. So you have all the hard parts, and you're not guaranteed any of the good parts. And you choose to do that anyway. And like I said, God bless you, because that's just hard. And so it's something, again, I'm really thankful for the way that my wife has approached the entire situation. I'm thankful for my ex-wife and her husband, my kid's stepdad, because without all of us working together, it wouldn't work. I can't claim any credit for it, because I'm only 1 out of 4. You know what I mean? But it's a really amazing testimony to what can be done if people are willing to act out of humility, act out of self-forgetfulness, and put our own egos aside and just try to ask the question, even if it's not my favorite, what is best for these kids? Even if it's not my first choice, what's best for these kids?
Yeah. I think, or I feel that there's a big part of Christ in this thing, like Christ-centeredness, if that was a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was raised Roman Catholic, you know, and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, you're showing God's patience. Like, you're literally displaying what it means to have, like, love is patient, love is kind. And we're supposed to, like, the greatest commandment, and not to get into a big religious talk, which I know you and I could do for a long time. But, you know, if our greatest commandment is to love our neighbor as thyself,
right,
that's what you're doing, you know. And so I look back at what my life was like. I was raised Roman Catholic, and that wasn't displayed at all. It was judgment. It was eye gouging and name calling and hate and grudges and everything that we're not supposed to do as Christians. That was what was modeled.
Yeah.
But here you are, super patient, you know, enjoying what you have, but also knowing that it could be worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And again, and I appreciate the encouragement. The thing is, I would love to take credit, but really, it is exactly what you described in terms of being grateful for what God has given me, and therefore wanting to also share that with other people. Like, I've been at situations where life has been awful, and I've been in situations where life has been awful because of my poor decisions. And as a result of that, you know, again, that was what I had to come face to face with. And when I acknowledge that, the question is, okay, well, if I made the crap decisions that got me here, then what I need to do now is make different decisions to get where I'd rather be. And that took God really changing my heart to reveal to me that I had just been acting out of pride. I had been acting out of do what's good for Joel, do what Joel wants to do. And now, again, being able to step back from that, that's a testimony to what he's doing. And so, again, I love to share this stuff with other people to help them see the same thing, because whether a person's a Christian or not, the principles are true. That is, if you are willing to work with your ex-spouse for the betterment of your children, whether you're a Christian or not, that's a good idea. It's a good idea to work with your ex-spouse for the betterment of your children. But it certainly has made it easier on me knowing the reason that I do this is not just because I'm trying to do the right thing. It's because Christ has already done this for me. It's because he's already reached out to me to make it possible for me to be reconciled with him. And again, I'm really thankful to be able to share that kind of thing with people, to help them create better family situations, to try to release some of the tension by just encouraging people to let go of some of the hurt and to let go of the some of the pain, because when you do that, then everything else becomes easier. Yeah. And again, that sounds really simple. It's hard to do, but it sounds really simple. Just let it go. Right. Like that's the I've got $2, so it's the advice from Frozen. Just let it go and it's fine.
Yep.
But again, it's not that simple. You need help.
Yeah. I've got so my wife had children before from a previous engagement. So there's a 15-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl, and then so we got married when the 12-year-old was like a baby, like maybe 6, 7, 8 months old, something like that. We ended up getting married and stuff. And then just recently, as those kids grew up, we're like, okay, we'll figure this marriage thing out, because we were divorced in the first 8 months because it was just the other guy was really stupid. It was like really dumb, and like said that I was replacing him, and I was like, dude, I'm not replacing you. Like, I have step parents. Like, I know what it's like. Like, I'm not even sure.
Right.
And it was so many issues, so bad. And then with my drinking at the time too, it's just coupled with like, those aren't my kids. And that it was just like, I didn't know, like, you don't even know until you're in it. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Like, you don't even know until you're in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, we were divorced, and then ended up getting back together like a short time later. We ended up getting back together, and then, okay, let's try to make this work. And then, so we ended up, we got married, and we split up like a year later. And then we said, okay, let's get back together this time and make it work. And then like 2 years later after that, we were like, man, I don't know. Like, we were literally looking at each other like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if it's going to work. Like, we were just on the same terms. Like, before it was like, screw you. No, you suck. Okay, I'm divorcing you. Okay, fine. But this time it was like, I don't know if this is working. Like, I don't know if it is either. Like, maybe we're just not meant to be. And then she got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I deployed. We never went to church. And I left religion like, screw this. Like, this is stupid. This is really stupid. So I deploy. She starts going to church. All her friends like, come to church. She starts going to church, telling me I need to go to church. I'm like, you're stupid. We're definitely leaving. Because I was like so anti-God at the time. Like, I was like, oh, it's all his fault. My whole life is in shambles because of him.
Right.
I come back from deployment. Baby's born. We start going to church. Our relationship has just been like 10x. You know what I mean? Like,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, praise the Lord. That's something that's incredible.
Yeah, we still have ups and downs. We still have like frustrations, and we still like want to kill each other sometimes. But like there's just I'm better than I was before because we go to church and I try to embody what he's telling me, like all of Corinthians, but like just the principles in itself. Like, how do I make this work? And then our pastor's really good about what you're talking about is, yes, this is a handbook for life, but let me tell you how this can make you better. Let me show you the way or the example. And then I take those examples. I'm like, well, let me try them. Like, they've already been modeled for us. Like, let me put it in the context of my life and see what happens. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And again, that's a situation where I wouldn't want to give the false impression, obviously, that because we had the same kind of situation where when I first went through my divorce, like I remained in my church, and I was very grateful because my church came alongside me in a way that a lot of churches may not when people are going through divorce. And the hard part about that is it shouldn't be that way. That is, I remember going to a church lunch not long after my separation, and one of the guys that I've gone to church with for years asked me, he said, so, how come you're here? I'm kind of surprised to see you here. I said, why? And he said, well, just because, I know you're going through a tough time, and a lot of people will probably be home hiding out, keeping their head low. And I said, yeah, I can understand that, but the problem is, like, if I can't go to church, like, where on earth can I go and be welcomed and encouraged? And he goes, no, you're exactly right. Like, we're glad you're here. And I was really thankful for that in the sense of, my church coming alongside me and saying, hey, look, you screwed up and you're going through a tough time, but we are here to help. And that's something that, again, it's not always that way. And I'm grieved by that because what I don't want is for, I hate that the church has a reputation of being judgmental. I hate that churches and Christians especially have a reputation of being unwilling to help people who are screwed up, because the truth is we're all screwed up. We're all messed up. The best people in the world have screwed up. And so really the question is, what can we do to try to fix it? And I think that you're doing a great job with your show, just the whole title of Life Transformation. Like, this is what we're here to do, is to turn things around and make things better. And I'm thankful that my church played a huge role in that for me. And I'm glad that it has for you as well. That's excellent.
Yeah, definitely. So as we start to close the show, man, let's talk about your book for the next, we got about 6 minutes left. Let's talk about your book. Sure. The book is titled Inverted Leadership, Lead Others Better by Forgetting About Yourself. So you were #1 bestseller on Amazon in the business leadership category. So is this book about life, or is it more about business?
It's more about life. I was actually really excited to see it get up there in that category. That was kind of cool. The book really is about, and again, it starts at kind of a meta perspective. It's about your whole mindset toward leadership. And so one of the chapters is about just the whole, what I call the concept of confident humility, which sounds like a paradox, but it isn't. That's why the title's inverted leadership, because you got to turn everything upside down. So confidence is simply being sure of what you're good at. It's knowing what your gifts are. And then humility is self-forgetfulness. So confident humility in leadership means taking what you're good at and using it to serve other people. It's that simple. Take what you're good at and use it to serve other people. And then I ask a few questions in the book. Okay, so does that mean you should focus on having an impact on people or focus on success? You know, should you focus on getting good results, or should you focus on building good relationships? Should you focus on just someone's good intentions, or should you focus on the outcome of their action? And all of those are questions that are kind of explored through storytelling, because I share a lot of stories from history. I share a lot of stories from my own family history and my past. And the goal there is to get people to think about their decision-making so that they can make better decisions. Because, again, your decision-making is what's going to shape everything that comes after. Not only the decision that you made, but the reasons that you made your decision. You can do the right thing for the wrong reason, and the outcome isn't going to be what you want it to be. Not long-term, because you were doing it for the wrong reason, right? So these are things that I try to explore in the book. You know, one of the goofiest stories that I shared in there, I love to share it on podcasts too, in the chapter that talks about results in relationships, the chapter title is Winning Arguments Even a Thing? And what I mean by that is, in my first marriage, we'd been married probably 3 or 4 years, and my wife and I were having a disagreement about how to load the dishwasher. And everybody in the world has had that disagreement, like what goes where in the dishwasher. Like everybody who has a dishwasher, you've had this disagreement. And, you know, what happened is, like, one of us had loaded the dishwasher, and the other one went behind and unloaded it and reloaded it. And I don't know who started it. And so what happened is this went back and forth for probably 20 minutes, unloading the dishwasher, reloading the dishwasher, unloading the dishwasher, loading the dishwasher. And I don't know who, quote, unquote, won that argument. I don't know who had the final say in how to load the dishwasher. Okay, so I don't know who won. What I do know is our relationship lost, because what was happening is, as the husband, I was putting my desire to be right about loading a dishwasher. I was putting my desire to be right in front of my relationship with my wife. That's what I was doing. Ultimately, it was just an issue of pride. You know what I mean? It was just, I know more than you about how to load a dishwasher. Well, what a stupid argument to have. Who cares who knows how to load a dishwasher better? But that's what it was. It was, I wasn't willing to give way. I wasn't willing to say, you know what, we'll just do it your way, and that's fine. Because if the dishes get hot and they get soap on them and they get wet, they'll probably be clean enough. Like, really, what difference does it make? You know what I mean? And so that was a big eye opener for me, to just look at it and say, it's not worth it. And I didn't do that in that moment. And so that's one of the many things I'm trying to do differently in my current marriage, is look at all the mistakes I made, and there were plenty in my first marriage, and try to do those things better in this marriage. And again, that's been a huge shift for me. That's been a big help. So again, I share a lot of stories like that in the book. Just, here's what I did poorly. Here's how I should have done it. Here's how I encourage you to do it in the future, that kind of thing.
And it's all about the relationship. In the end, it's all about the relationship.
It is. That's right. Because ultimately, like, those dishes, they probably don't even exist anymore. We don't even live in that state. That was when we were living in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I heard you mention you're from up there. Yeah. We lived in Fayetteville for 3 years. That's where that particular dishwasher incident took place. We live back in Alabama now. You know, like, what really mattered in that situation was our relationship, and it lost. And that's not the way that we should be.
Yeah, my wife and I are having disagreements right now about what I want to do after, like, I retire from the military. I got 2.5, 3 years left. And, you know, we were having very disagreement about, like, no, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, but I don't want to do this. And it's like, I want to do my thing. Like, I want to do this.
Right.
But what's more important, I guess, is the relationship.
Yeah, and it's definitely, you know, trying to find a place where you two can come together and say, okay, why do I want to do this, and why do you want me to do that, and let's maybe see if we can find a common ground.
Perfect. All right, man, that's it for the show. Wow, dude, thank you so much for coming on the show. Last episode of season 2 of 2018. Pumped, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's absolutely been my pleasure. I love doing this. Glad to finally get to really connect with you on the show. And, I hope your listeners have enjoyed it. Hope they all have a very happy and blessed 2019.
You too, man. You too. Thank you so much. So, Life Transformation Radio listeners, an amazing guest impacting the world around him in leadership, blended family, and education. If anything resonated with you, please reach out to Joel. He's an amazing, amazing guy doing amazing things. Go to reallifeleading.com, reallifeleading.com. Look him up on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. He's doing incredible things. So as I close, I always say, live your brand. Find opportunities every day to live out the core values that you hold deep in your heart. And I call that living your brand. Have a great 2019.
Skydiving. This is amazing.
Yeah, but you know what else is amazing? An iPhone 6S for just $49 at Metro.
Really?
Imagine streaming all the way down with that amazing camera. I'm switching.
That's smart.
You know what else is smart? Parachutes.
Switch to Metro and get an amazing iPhone 6S for only $49. Metro by T-Mobile. Phone offer requires port-in of number not currently active on T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Skydiving. This is amazing.
Yeah, but you know what else is amazing? An iPhone 6S for just $49 at Metro.
Really?
Imagine streaming all the way down with that amazing camera. I'm switching.
That's smart.
You know what else is smart? Parachutes.
Switch to Metro and get an amazing iPhone 6S for only $49. Metro by T-Mobile. Phone offer requires port-in of number not currently active on T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. See store for details and terms and conditions.